Lavande from Events Department.
And this is Shania from the Writers Pool team of Student Inclusion Cell of St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. We at the Student Inclusion Cell not only aim at promoting inclusion and accessibility across all events on campus for the differently abled, but also focus on promoting an overall inclusion in terms of gender, linguistics, cultural diversity, and so on.
As obvious as it may be, in this time of crisis, as uncertain and unprecedented is this one, we always forget the voices of those who make the loudest sound through their struggles. And we understand that what we need right now are stories of recovery, of persistence, of struggle, and specifically the stories of those whom we comfortably forget, the women. Right from the traditional era, women are always doing the unpaid care work, and emerging research shows that this work has increased during the time of crisis. So, for our virtual series, Fluid Form, a Gendered Renaissance, we have uh, our topic for the day is feminism in lockdown world, and we have Dr. Pranoti Chirmule with us to talk on this topic. At this point, I would like to introduce Dr. Chirmule shortly. Dr. Chirmule is a assistant professor at St. Xavier's College, and she has a doctorate from uh, JNU Delhi in sociology. Before joining St. Xavier's College, she has also worked at TIS Mumbai and CSER as a researcher, and she has also worked at Pakhat Foundation Delhi as their program associate. Dr. Pranoti is a next level for Reiki healing, and she loves to travel a lot. She enjoys her chai immensely. I wish, ma'am, we would be having this session in the college and I could offer her a cup of tea. We warmly welcome Dr. Pranoti Chirmule. Before handing over the mic to her, I would like to give some instructions. All the participants will be muted throughout the sessions, and we request all of you, if you are comfortable, feel free to keep your cameras on. Uh, Towards the end of the session, we will be having a question answer session. So kindly put your questions in the chat box. At the end of the session, we will be providing a feedback form in the Zoom chat box and YouTube comment section. It is very necessary to fill out the feedback form for Xavierites to get the ECC point. It is a humble request that kindly keep a tab on Zoom chat box and YouTube comment section. No emails and WhatsApp messages will be entertained for feedback form later. At this point, I would like to hand over mic to Dr. Pranoti. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dhanashree, and also Shania, and whoever the team is behind, doing this meaningful work. I'm going to start by sharing screen, and thanks to my buddies here, I have learned it just 10 minutes back. So let's see how this is. Can you guys see my screen? Can I get a heads up?
Yes,
like
ma'am.
you can unmute yourself and then. Okay, great. So I'm just going to make it full screen. All right. So very essential to when we're talking about feminism, and I saw the poster and I didn't think about it before. So I did another session some time back for the theory club, and I had a similar argument. And didn't seem to be, looking at this one. And now that I see it, and with my face on it, I just found it a little difficult because we're talking about inclusion. We're talking about, like Dhanashree rightly said, a lot of people whose voices aren't being heard. I think we can't say that the feminist movement is purely a movement of women, because the poster also has females in it. And I think one can't look at feminism only from. So let's quickly go back to this particular slide that I was talking about. Is where so Yeshavi is my daughter, and what changed in the lockdown is something that this particular talk is trying to address. So when we talk about feminism, I think there are many other things that happen in order for that movement to come about. Okay, so these are a couple of like running dialogues that I heard in the lockdown period. And I thought that it was important to kind of share that. So a lot of people, especially very senior colleagues and who are in charge of things, told to me that Pranoti, you're at home, right? So bahut sare kaam hai. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And there was a long list of things that needed responses to. Then if we challenged that particular idea and said that, there are literally like lots of things to do because there was no house help. So literally I was cleaning utensils. I was helping my mom-in-law cook. Between both of us, we were trying to take care of my daughter. And whenever I challenged the idea of that, don't keep throwing work at me, people said, but I'm sure you can do this because you're so good and you're so talented. I'm sure you have solutions to this. And it was not something that was pleasing. Okay. The other thing that also happened to women like me is that because now you were spending more time or your daughter was seeing you, instantly there was a comment said that, maybe you should spend more time with her and give her that care and that, love that is required. And I said, yeah, but I try and do that as much as possible. Why does it have to get articulated like this? Then the next thing that came to my mind is that, what really is the scope of my work? Like, what was I doing in the lockdown? And I thought maybe we should, talk about it, like all of us. So on my to-do list, the first item was home chores. So anything outside of the kitchen, so like folding clothes, running the washing machine. Once the clothes are folded, then you, pile them up depending on the house member. And dry them up, fold them, clean the house. Then the next item was obviously kitchen chores. And when my mom-in-law and I said that, maybe we want a day off, who was going to do that work for a moment, we thought. But doesn't mean that it was a bad picture. And we'll talk about this a little later. Then it was about kids' chores. So we were ensuring between my mom-in-law and me that, we were clearing up after her. When she was like playing. She is somebody who does take care, so it's great. But at the same time, she's a kid at the end, so she's going to leave certain things for adults to do. Then, and the next thing, and mind you, this is not only for me. I'm speaking for a lot of women who were working women and who are now inside the house. And these are the to-do lists that they have. The fourth item, luckily that's something that did not work for me, so which is it's a great thing, is that husband chores. So yesterday I was watching something, and so I was watching Step Up, and in that particular film, the mother is seen. So she's a foster mother, and she's taking care of her own kids, and along with that, her foster son. And the man in the house is literally sitting there, and he doesn't even move to change his bottle of beer. So the woman in that speed that she does everything, almost like the Wonder Woman, she's supposed to kind of do a refill of that bottle as well. And when we were saying husband chores, we were supposed to reformat them and call them as wifely duties. So I thought that was something that needed to be looked at. Now, what was all of this that was happening around us? And we really didn't stop to think about this because honestly, we didn't have time. And when I'm saying we, I'm speaking for a lot of women and working women in all forms. Okay, I'm not saying working women as in those who go out to work, but those who are also working at home and who have been tirelessly and for decades have been working. The format in which instructions came, I thought about is that maybe this was mansplaining. For some of us who don't know what mansplaining is, so it's how all kinds of explanations are given by men. Like nobody stops to ask you what your opinion is. And we'll talk more about this. So I'm going to give you a little task. Can I get a heads up if you can hear me? Or have we lost connection?
No, ma'am, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. So all those of you who are listening, watching, I want you to quickly grab a sheet of paper. And this time I want a paper where you can write out things. So there should be enough space on it. So grab a sheet of paper. I'll wait for 10 seconds. Right? So now draw two lines, two columns. Make 2 columns. So just draw one line in the middle and you have 2 columns, just like you can see on the slide. So in one column, list down all the respected mythological female imageries or characters that you know of. And on the other, and it's absolutely your choice, right mein likhna hai, left mein likhna hai, which column goes where is absolutely your decision, okay? In the second column, list down all the sorts of swear words that you know. All. I'm giving you full scope to swear. Depending on your circumstances, if you choose to say it aloud, that's up to you. We are nowhere responsible for this. But go ahead and take about a minute to do that. So I'm assuming you have started scribbling. Think, think, think. It's quite possible that the swear words might come faster. All right, are we good? Or can somebody give me a heads up if you need like 30 seconds more? Do you need 30 seconds more?
No, ma'am.
We're good? Okay.
Yes.
Now look at the two and do a comparison. And you will start seeing that all the swear words, at least about 85 to 90% of them are about women. Because I'm on record and I am part of a very reputed institution, I'm not going to call them out. But if you look at every word that's there, every swear words that are there on your sheet or that are there on your mind, are all about ensuring that you bring in certain kind of shame to women, or you introduce the idea of shame and stigma through using women. Okay, but if you look at the flip side of it, we're talking about respected mythological female imageries or characters. And let's not make a comment or a morality argument here. But if you think about it, that what is really happening is perhaps we know less of those so-called respected mythological figures. Okay, I want to show you, share with you an image. Okay, this is something that somebody shared with me long back, and I thought it was very important. And as much as this image is important in many ways, we need to see it a little like together. And it's a representation of how women are looked at by men. Okay, and as much as I am somebody who is very mindful of how gender norms work, we cannot deny what happens in India or across the globe in terms of how women are looked at. And this is an image that we're typically bringing from the Indian context because it helps to see it so much closely. And at the same time, it's a representation of how, if you see the two men that are there, a man that worships, also a man that stands at distance and is only, being a spectacle to this. If you look at, on the one hand, it's your mythological figures who are, worshipped so much, but it's the same set of women who get, brutalized, who are molested, who are never given their space. And when you talk about giving somebody their space, we sometimes trivialize the movement that feminism has really worked hard to put together and make it more metaphorical than the more literal sense of what it means to be giving somebody their space and what it means to be talking about equality. Now, if we did do this exercise, if we looked at the kind of mansplaining that was happening, I thought it was important to kind of look at, a couple of points that were there. So I thought like food for thought. So the first one is saying that, we included women looking at, and I think, you know, when we are saying we normalize the gaze of women, gaze at women, you're talking about, you know, objectifying women. But let's not forget then when we say we, it's a lot of women who do that to women as well. So let's not be under this entire notion that it's only men who do this to women, but women do this to other women as well. So that's the reason why a lot of, so me and my friend, when we travel in the train, and if it so happens that she's wearing shorts, everybody looks at her, and nobody thinks of doing that introspection in terms of what that person who is staring, what is that person wearing, okay? You might be showing off a lot more of your body than anybody else, but who decides this, okay? So very careful in terms of when we're looking at this particular argument. The second thing, and very much in relevance to, you know, the current condition about the lockdown. So we started looking at women as or partners, and I'm being mindful of gender here, is as property, okay? And who are supposed to be handled or manhandled by, you know, for that individual's whims and fancies, where you're supposed to behave in a certain way, you're supposed to consume everything in a certain way, and you're supposed to respond only in very limited ways, okay? Then my next question is that, you know, did COVID change anything for us, okay? And I would say a yes and no. And some bit of it is scary, some bit of it is revelation, okay? And that's exactly what we're addressing, is that does feminism as an idea change in the lockdown? Again, like I said, it's a yes and no, and we'll figure it out in terms of why and how, okay? So what are we debating here? Is so a lot of us keep using the word patriarchy, but what really is patriarchy? Is it about men being abusive? Is it men about being mean and hurtful to women? Or is it about something that's bigger than that, which is talking about power dynamics? It's talking about a hierarchical structure that assumes that it has power over the individual, and it continues to regain that and reinforce that sense of hierarchy and that sense of power, rather also authority, to decide things on behalf of others, okay? But I've said this before also, this is something that I read and I was so shocked because it's so true, is that how do I get a sense of power? I get a sense of power when people are scared of me. And if I even just use that one particular line in so many contexts, it makes so much sense. That whether you're talking about the educational institution, whether you're talking about the home setting, whether you're talking about, you know, a lot of us here are from Xavier's, and all of us who, you know, every single day in and out, when they have to get into the subway, why do subways become scary? Subways become scary is because, you know, somebody is gaining that power over us, because we are so scared. But why are we scared? We are scared because somebody decides to forget the body distance that's there and is willing to come closer and decide to unproblematically touch you. It's just like, you know, somebody mentioned in one of my classes just 2 days ago, it's almost the same logic that's there in a festival like Holi, which goes with a beautiful tagline that has been passed on over generations, which says, "Bura na maro, Holi hai." And that's exactly what is happening here, okay? But what is changing? And we'll see, okay? The other thing that I also felt is that, you know, did COVID change anything for us? Like, you know, maybe things got safer, maybe things got evident, maybe people start speaking up. It's not that easy. And I always say this is that change, as much as needed, is not so easy to bring about. So when you look at COVID, COVID made things far more scary. Is that you got your partner in the house, and your partner is now supposed to be at your beck and call. And if you think about it, somebody who had difficulties in their relationship, and I'm not saying marriage particularly, I'm saying in a relationship, and where they thought that getting out of the house was their moment of freedom, the lockdown stole that moment of freedom completely. And was COVID then becoming a gendered space? Yes, it was, okay? This is something that I thought about, and I thought, you know, what really was changing. And this is something that deeply disturbs me, and that's the reason why. So if you look at the feminist movement, went through 3 waves. The third wave has a very interesting composition to it, and we need to, think about it and consume it as much as possible, but at the same time understand the relevance of it or the rationale behind it. Like if you look at the feminist movement is a movement that, as much it talks about gender dynamics, it talks about hierarchies that have oppressed people to the extent that we have stopped talking about it. And that's the reason why you had women getting out of their homes and getting people, and when I'm saying people, it's everybody from every group, every race, every community, and every age group, to come to terms with, like, ho kya raha hai hamare aaspas? And if you see, is it only about the divide between men and women? I don't think so. COVID taught us, and hopefully it did, is it taught us many more lessons. Okay. Now, if you look at it, the feminism, which was seen as a movement together and for fighting out and challenging and questioning oppressive structures, we have come to a point where it's now getting fractured. Okay. And why am I calling it fractured? Because what was happening now in a lockdown situation had many, many scary things that it brought to the forefront. Okay. So if I talk about the household situation, the idea of feminism, where, one of the quick things that comes to most of our minds, and most, men and women included, is that it is how women stand up for women. Okay. But the household in the COVID situation made it a little more scary, made it different. Why was it different? Because now what was happening? So if you saw my initial slide, it was talking about to-do lists. In the to-do list, I never mentioned, for instance, another feature, which I want to talk about, because I don't mean any offense to all the women who are working. They're all working, like all women work. But what I want to add to that particular list is women who are also working outside of the home and also inside the house. Now, what happened in that process, and I just felt like this was a Gandhian version of it, is that the fracture that came in that movement in the household was, and I'm sorry if this kind of disturbs people, is that it was a distinction between blue collar and white collar. And the blue collar became all those women who were working in the house tirelessly for generations. But it was, the white collar, which is talking about women who were working women, and it had a very different connotation and status to it. And mind you that, when you looked at something like that, it just really, really tore that movement into binaries. And feminism is actually challenging the binary first of men and women, and what gets added into how they're supposed to play out their roles. Okay. When I'm saying that the fracturing happened in the house, a lot of times it was, an argument about, oh, but I need to, finish this particular task that has been given by my boss. So I need to be online and finish this within like 5 hours. And the woman in the house, who was perhaps not working, but was working inside the house, said, but, maybe you should, take up some other role some other time in the day, then I can get time off. And the struggle that happened between women who were seen as, one part of one movement, suddenly had, this opposition, which said that, now I need to do a quick postmortem of our time schedules. And it was talking a language of rights, but it was also talking a language of injustice, which said that keep in mind that you are supposed to, perform your duties, and duties, which means homely duties. But then you're also supposed to do your work duties. But then the work as a word got fractured by saying blue collar, white collar, manual labor, intellectual labor. And that's deeply disturbing. In the same way, for instance, where was the idea of feminism going? Because, and I'm not making a comment on feminist movements and activism that does happen every single day and in their own format. It's not a questioning of that at all. But I'm talking about how we as individuals, what were we thinking about and what were we consuming out of what the media was throwing at us? Did we for a moment think about the fracturing that happened between the urban and rural one more time? Because we told everybody that, in the feminist movement, we were talking about the rights and the injustice that were happening. And we need to talk about all women. But again, it became that, like what Dhanashree said right at the beginning, is that it failed to, voice the voices of women who were in the rural spaces. What changed in the lockdown? It just made stereotypes bigger. Stereotypes about the urban being better than the rural, about women in the urban space being slightly better than the rural. And I'm saying slightly better. I'm absolutely mindful of what I'm saying. Is that when you look at currently, everybody is talking about digitizing. Why go far? You and I are interacting because we are in a digital space. But when you look at digitalizing, you compel people, and I have said this in some other context before, but I see this as absolutely as a Darwinian vision, which says either you ensure that you survive or you die out. So basically, it's the survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest digitally, and survival of the fittest who is privileged. I'm not saying that women in the urban spaces who are better off socioeconomically are having fabulous lives. They aren't, and we'll talk about that. Okay. I was reading this somewhere, and I just thought that why did we not ponder upon this a little more carefully? And we unproblematically took this up. Okay. Where we said, oh, we need to be in social distancing from each other. We're using, so I think Love Ajkal has that one particular scene. They have managed to, slice it out of the film and, talk about how many meters distance there should be between people. And weren't we supposed to call it physical distancing? Since when did we start calling it social distancing? And we didn't have qualms about saying, oh, I need to be in social distancing from you. But when you talk about social distancing, you completely, forget and blind off to the history of untouchability. And that was social distancing. That was conscious, and that was to talk about a coercion that has existed and which people have so unfortunately taken up. And we as people, we use that in common parlance. We don't say we need to be in 2 meters distance from each other. In school, we were taught like 1 hand distance from each other. वो चल रहा था. Social distancing की बात हुई तो हमने कुछ भी नहीं कहा. We were okay with it. Was it fracturing it? Yes, it was. Okay. What happened in that process, and that's where my point about the urban spaces came, is that now the partner, and especially the woman, and I'm sorry if this is in any way triggering, is that women in the COVID situation, if you have read around this, is that the number of cases of domestic violence and harassment have increased substantially. Instagram talks about it, so many different spaces talk about it, but are we doing anything about it? Yeah, we might have, certain spaces open up to say, to deal with the anxiety, but deal with the anxiety when women get badly bruised, when they are beaten up. And the beating up is not only the physical beating up, it's also sexual manipulation of women. Is that a frustrated man decides to do that to his wife because unemployment became a big deal. And unemployment became a big deal even for top-notch corporate officials. They might have had the best of jobs some months before the lockdown, and they were celebrating. They were also taking in all the bonuses that came with it. But what happened is that one fine day, because the company wasn't doing well and they weren't in business, they were just told to, go. And they had to leave. And that kind of frustration, which is also in some ways the frustration of how, your ego that was so big had now crumbled to, a speck, to an atom. And how do you deal with that? Like, what is the way that you can fight the system? If you can't fight the system, you abuse another person in the system, which happens to be your partner. And I'm being very mindful of not using the word marriage here, because let's not be under this notion is that this is only talking about women who are in marital situations. People are in live-in situations as well. And mind you, this is also among, extremely young people. How is it that, this is happening? One other thing that I also, thought that, two things actually that I need to mention here is that when we talk about feminism, we created a separate, little pocket for when you wanted to talk about, the LGBTQ community. And maybe in that way, like the third wave is being inclusive in that particular process. But when we were dealing with all of this, if you look at the whole idea of coming out, when you were in the household situation, you can never come out. And I would modify my line and say it will become far more difficult to come out. And it has pushed a lot of people back into their shell, where, you know, getting out of the house meant a step into freedom to be how you were and how you felt. And here was a spot where now you were supposed to live the stereotype that was thrown at you depending on the gender that you are, and never considering for a moment what your sexual orientation can be. Okay, so when you look at something like that, the whole idea of the IPV that I have mentioned in the slide is talking about intimate partner violence, which has increased substantially, and women are supposed to, you know, deal with all of this and continue. Okay, and for, you know, I just felt like the media never covered what was happening, you know, and substantially there are you know, references that are there, but they aren't enough. They're not talking about what the life of sex workers is. And in that spot, maybe I want to use the word social distancing. You shunned them. And it goes back to that exercise that we did and the image that we shared in terms of women as property and women as objects, is that whenever you want, you can, you know, access them. But when you think that it is about, you know, a certain hygiene argument that is being constantly told to you, you were told that, you know, stay away from them. But the staying away just made it far more difficult, because they didn't even get ration. And there were very few people who decided to, you know, stand up for that cause and go ahead and help them. And it makes a big difference. Okay. So I saw this one particular image and I thought it was very important, and I'm going to read out that line. Is that access to justice for some women is a matter of life and death. Access to justice for women in a global pandemic cannot be put on hold. But if you see in the current situation, it cannot be put on hold, but unfortunately it has been put on hold. Is that because it's in the house and it's an older campaign? And that's also the reason why, you know, in this particular pandemic, the campaign needs to be brought back. But how many people are going to respond to it is the Bell Bajao campaign. If there's violence happening around you, can we really even touch the bell? Because the bell needs to be sanitized, right? And the madness around sanitization, which I'm not saying is not important, but has changed a lot of things. Because are we going to open our mouths? Are we going to get out of the house and, you know, ring the bell of the neighbor to stop any incidents of violence? We're going to think 100 times. And that's very scary for me. Okay. I just thought that, you know, maybe I want to also showcase this. And a lot of students, a lot of students have quizzed me around this, and that's the reason why I decided to put it up in the form of my trait list. Of course, there is a reason why I put it in quotes, is that I'm extremely proud of. So I multitask, something that my mother put in me as a virtue. Okay, ye karna hi chahiye. That will show you how, you know, women as women are great, and I see the value in what she says. Okay. And I'm not in any possible way, I love my mother. It's because of her that I stand the way I am, and also my dad. And we'll come to the part on feminism and redefinitions of it. Okay. So what do I do next is that, how do I multitask? Because I work for the home, I work from home. But in the process of dealing between the two, when I am in the latter, which is I work from home, and I am on my digital world, I feel guilty of not being there to work for the home. So what do? I have my lovely therapy to it, is that I stay up late, where I have finished all my Guni Bahu, Guni Beti tasks, and I'm free of any burden and any guilt on my heart and my head, and I find peace. And that's my quiet time. And if you can see, quiet time is in quotes. So there was this one time when I was up at around 1 o'clock, and one of my TY students texted me because she saw me online, because I was checking some references, and I had sent a particular reference to a friend of mine. So I just checked, I was searching in the chat, And she saw me online, and she, with a lot of politeness and with a lot of, prefacing before, she sent me a message saying that, why are you up so late? So I said, I have work. And since January, there has been like, also with, changing of a lot of work dynamics. Now there is just so much bureaucratic work. Like every single day, I spend the first, when I sit down, which is at 11 in the night, I spend the first 50 minutes just replying to several emails. Students from FYSYTY, colleagues, several queries around things, people outside my domain in terms of academics. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a ex-student who's deciding to have a conversation. And I just feel that like in no time it's 12 o'clock and I am working. Okay, I am being mindful of the time. So this is how most women's, some of you here are from my class, and we did do this exercise, and of course I kept forgetting about it, and some of my fab students reminded me of it, which also means that why was I forgetting? Because this is how most women's minds are. Take about 10 seconds just looking at it or reading it. Some of it sounds very funny, but some of it is very scary. Okay, just take a look. And if you see, for instance, is that in that process, the font size of the focus on the present and the need to fart is bigger than anything. And literally, I have, are we saying that we don't have time for all of this? And some of you might laugh at this, but it is something that's really scary. And I think that's also the reason why a lot of women are being branded as being bad drivers. I don't want to get into the debate of whether they're good drivers or bad drivers. I'm just saying is that this is the amount and the density of things that are on women's minds that are not there on other people's minds. And how do you cope? And when do you sleep? Okay. So then what was happening in the lockdown? Okay. So, and very important that these are newer references that came about. So people started talking about things that they like, things that they explored, but were there undertones of some kind of worry? And I've listed down whatever best I thought was relatable to all of us. Is that, so did COVID make me old school? So what do you mean by old school? Is that, people, so the whole notion of woke and coolness is very different for this generation vis-a-vis my generation and vis-a-vis my parents' generation. And for a lot of it, it means an external representation of things. But what you were doing is that, you were almost saying that outside the house, you were some other personality. And now, because you can't get out, what were you doing then? And see, keep this in mind is that, you're also waiting for the lockdown to end. But otherwise, digitally, you're still active with all your friends and your peers and your social network. And there also, you have to narrate a story ki lockdown mein kar kya rahe the yaar? You have to have a listener. The conversation needs to go on. You can't be left out saying that, kuch nahi kar rahe the, TV dekh rahe the. TV pe kya dekh rahe the? Also very important. So what you were doing is that, was this happening like you're going old school where, and there is a particular reason why I'm saying that, this is a comment that I keep hearing is that, oh, I was left leaning. And the whole idea of left ideology or Marxist ideology is often seen as, ye jhola pehen ke gale mein kuch nahi pehante hai, badi bindi pehante hai, offbeat kapde pehante hai. That's not how ideologies get represented. They need to be practically applicable. And women do this and men do this in very different ways. And we need to be respectful of that. So when you said that, I was left leaning and then how can I chant? How can I be religious? But Marx said that, religion is the opium of the masses. But why were we chanting? Have you ever seen somebody, a male person with a rosary or he's sitting and chanting? No. Why? Because we only made women do this. Why? You take a slide back because they were dealing with so much. They wanted to break from things. So if I got into chanting, if I'm a 19-year-old and if I decide to, all of the 4 things that are there, the 4th one is something that people can talk about on Instagram. But the first 3 is something that you will only talk to your close set of friends. कौन बोलेगा कि मैं knitting करती हूँ या knitting करता हूँ? Nobody will say that. So when you look at something like this, I think it's very, very important is that what was the new reference? But what was the new undertone of worry? Is that, was there that hierarchy that we challenged? maybe we didn't, get time to challenge it adequately. Of course, the next question that everybody's asking, that really am I signing up for this? So I have mentioned this. So for a couple of committees that are when college started, we were supposed to take interviews, and I just thought it was very amusing, and I'm not saying that with any kind of sarcasm, is that when I was listening to all of them, I just felt very amused and positively amused when a lot of men and women said, oh, these are things that I wanted to do but never got time, but I'm doing that now. And I thought it was great. Like, people got time to, engage with things that they liked, because otherwise you're living up to, somebody else's dreams. So what was happening? But in that process, did we ever ask this? So this is an exercise that we did with, so I teach a paper on leisure studies, and we did do this exercise. But I thought it was important to ask this question here, because when we were talking about fractured feminisms, we were never thinking about leisure time for women, because now there was no leisure time. I have had students tell me, I have seen my mother do this, I have seen my mom-in-law do this. It's so unfortunate is that women are doing everything. And when do they get a moment to, quietly sit, have their cup of chai, or have their own breakfast? They're making breakfast for the whole khandan, and they're having breakfast as they stand there. They gobble their breakfast, they, dunk in a big glass of water. But nobody is thinking about that, right? And isn't that something that needs to be thought about? Because when I saw that particular photo essay, it's talking about how, they collated, images of women, very carefree mode, without any inhibitions. But unfortunately, like one student pointed this out beautifully, she said that, but if you look at all these images, they're also talking about the stereotypes only. घर में मेकअप लगा रहे हैं, या किसी और को फेस पैक लगा रहे हैं, या साइकिल राइड करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, and somewhere we don't have an alternative narrative. And isn't that worrisome? We need to have newer narratives. Okay. What also meant that if and the college is also engaging with this, and I appreciate their effort for this, is that now we needed to do an introspection. Is that, did women now need therapy? And the best part is that all of us women tell our either our younger friends or our younger students that हाँ therapy करनी चाहिए, therapy में कोई stigma नहीं है, लेकिन खुद के लिए तो stigma है. Is that it means that I am crumbling down as a powerful woman? I am crumbling down in my job to multitask? No, I can't be doing this, so I need to get back. So the whole notion of can they access therapy, one is what is playing on in their mind which stops them. But the second is also accessibility. Can women get out on their own and do this? And mind you, urban and rural women. So it's not something that, urban women are always in a good position. They aren't. Okay? Because now their activities are being closely surveilled, like Foucault would say, because everybody's at home. And everybody needs to know everything about the woman's life, which is, I think, very unfortunate. Okay? One very important thing, because, and that's how, why is it that women are working, and what is the emotion that it generates for them, is that you can't afford to, and that's the fracture that I was also talking about, is that when you look at, can you afford to fall sick? You can't, especially if you are from the middle or the lower socioeconomic class. So what do you do with that worry? Is that you try and keep like the whole family healthy, and you work really hard. But in that process, if you look at what I've mentioned in the slide, it's also where the industry or the market, decided to pick up that particular argument and work in their favor, and not work in the favor of women. So you have everything like products which have an immunity booster and things like that. And women are going ahead like frantically buying it, that I need to keep my family healthy because that's my job, right? Besides my other job of, being digitally active and doing my office related work. But were women buying anything for themselves? Maybe not. And perhaps that's how, the idea of self-care needs to be seen. So a little bit about me as teachers, and I'm going to try and keep it as quick as possible. Shania, give me a heads up in terms of the time, okay? So this is an image that was shared by a colleague of mine. And I used to take a lot of pride in it. There was one time where I was so fascinated by this image that it was my WhatsApp DP. And a lot of people kind of commented on it. Now, I took a lot of pride, but lockdown told me that this is the sad story of teachers and a lot of other women in a lot of other professions, is that it just meant that, you know, we were up all day and night. When are we sleeping? Okay. And which also means that, you know, everybody else has the right to sleep, or has the right to leisure, or has the right to rest. But what about a lot of women as teachers? Okay. Now, I can't give up on, you know, not talking about my profession. Okay. I dearly love it. But at the same time, we need to, you know, see what challenges are happening with that particular space as well. So I want to, pick up a reference from Dorothy Smith and Patricia Hill Collins, fabulous women writers in the field of sociology. And they talk about one very important thing, especially Dorothy Smith talks about, and now I see the value of it every passing day when I am in this lockdown phase, which tells me that in order to understand and document women's life, we need to see the everyday and every night spaces of women. And a lot of times, the moment you say every night, you're constantly talking about, oh, women going out, the clothes that they wear. Wait a minute, can we not talk about that? I mean, how long are we going to only talk about that? There are several struggles that are happening before you go out, and we aren't even addressing that. Okay. So one thing to remember, and that kind of, you know, ties up to my critique of the image that the poster had, is that both these women writers, and that's the reason why I really look up to them, is that they are talking about that the standpoint that, even if it's talking about a feminist standpoint, the idea of the standpoint is talking about challenging hierarchical structures, but it says that it should be the voice of all those who are voiceless, which can include also men, which can include people from another gender, which can include people from another race, and which can include people from another class. And I think that's a big lesson to learn. So, this was literally like the summation of what was really happening, but I want you to focus on the last, 3 or 4 things on that list. Is that, yes, and I'm saying this is that when somebody asked me this question, what was changing? I think one thing that, you know, COVID did for me, and I'm glad that this session has come up, so I thank the people who are behind this to ask me for this, is that it made me a little bit fearless to even utter these words on a public forum. Is that I slept less, I peed less, or I peed irregularly, I'm sorry. It's because I had to ensure that I log in before my students, because I need to stand up to the idea of punctuality that I so dearly stand for. And if I'm expecting some amount of punctuality from my students, as a teacher and as an individual, I need to respect it myself. But what was happening on the flip side is all of this. So some days back, it so happened, and I think it's very essential to talk about this, because I think it's also making me fearless to a certain extent, which means that, you know, I was unfortunately also screening my vocabulary in terms of how I talk to my students or talk to anybody on the digital space. Is that, can I really say that my daughter has just, and that is coming, which is a representation of the amount of socialization that has happened, is that women aren't supposed to use certain words. So all the swear words that are making a comment on women, we aren't even, like somebody like me who has been teaching for that long, not so long, but yeah, is that I am still screening my own language, screening my own vocabulary. I can't say that I don't know in English if there is even a word like that, but she has pottied. So am I supposed to tell people that? I don't know. Are students accommodating? Yes, they are. But at the same time, I'm supposed to also be mindful in my head, is that, can I just hurry all of this because I need to get back to class? And if you see, a lot of women were in a situation where they were, as much as there are memes at the cost of women in the lockdown, I think it was far more serious than what, you know, we are seeing it to be. Is that when there were images of the woman on the phone and with the baby in the hand, it's not funny anymore. But where do we go beyond this? How do we go beyond this? Okay. And I thought this was very important to, you know, quickly look at, is that, you know, there are so many images of behind every successful man or woman, who is there. And there's this one line which, you know, my friend's mother used to keep saying, kuch bhi ho jaye. No matter you become a scientist or you become an IS officer, at the end, sool and mool. So basically a kid and household. But how long are we going to, only look at this? So I said, let's do a quick, newer version of this, where chromosomes, which generally people don't talk about, but I thought we should. So quickly for Shania, can I get a heads up of how much time I have?
Ma'am, you can go for like 5.
Okay, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. So if you look at, if some people don't know what an XX chromosome is, basically females, XY is males. Now, I want to first talk about the females here. And okay, let's do one thing. Let's talk about the males here. Is that we need to also look at this, is that now we need to make this information available that home chores are unisex. Just like unisex parlors, home chores are also unisex. There is no any kind of division like that. So if Ariel does the share the load, we need to share the load even without a detergent and telling us so. Okay. Now there were some like memes around that, we're working from home and how much work there is and how much balancing of roles that we're doing. But can we, change the narrative to say working for the home? And we're not saying that, it means that don't do your office work. Do that, and also this, but change the way both men and women are looking at it. That can we say that this was work for home also? Because it's very different in terms of what it means for women and what it means for men. But as much as right at the beginning we said patriarchy is the problem, but patriarchy also takes away from men who, and this is a word that one of my colleagues uses, which is actionalized gender equality. They do this. My dad did that. My husband does it. And many more men do this. There are a lot of men who have literally single-handedly raised their son and daughters. And literally single-handedly in their growing up years. And can we forego their narrations? We can't. In the lockdown, never. Okay, so I think we need to go beyond this quintessential stereotypical understanding is that gender equality can only happen when men decide to give tea to women and they will give women a foot massage. Let's get over that narrative, because it takes away from men who are doing much more than that and aren't doing this as a token. And I will talk about it very quickly. Okay, for women, they need their quiet time. It's very, very legit. It's a need now. And so I saw this particular image and I thought it was fascinating. It says, now women need to see this and women need to tell this to others and understand it, that no is a complete sentence. Like, you don't need Amitabh Bachchan to say that. You need to know it yourself and you need to kind of spread that. So this is something that a very close friend of mine keeps telling me this, and I seem to kind of put it on the back burner, is that self-care means your own care and you doing this as priority. And you're not doing this as, okay, I'll do this later. Later when? Time kahan hai? And it's not about going to a parlor. It's about ensuring that you are the focus of everything. And I think we need to kind of, get men and women out of this guilt trip that they keep having in terms of, I didn't do 100% here, I didn't do 100% there. Okay, so very quickly, is there, why do we need feminism or feminisms? Okay, first thing is to help us challenge social reproduction of very extremely gendered roles that are there around us. What do these gendered roles do? Is that basically, it inculcates a very Foucauldian idea which talks about biopower. Is that power that now gets into your bodies and controls your body as well, where you will live up to certain standards that have been created for you. So I just thought that maybe, this was something that needed to, because I read about this, is that suddenly there was a surge in, sale of gowns. Gowns, I'm not talking about wedding gowns, the gowns that women wear at home, okay? And instantly a lot of, people made comments on, how they look and how women look very drab at home. And there were a lot of jokes that were there, but it just meant that women didn't want to dress up because it's not about why should we dress up, but they also do that, right? Okay, where they will do all the work, but when it comes to being digitally active and alive, you have to fit the bed, because only then can public opinion be seen. The public will see your opinion as valid, which is really unfortunate because it's not about ideas, but it's about a superficial reference and a superficial representation of somebody. So we needed to challenge that. Also, we needed to challenge very reductionist narratives of what feminism does for us, and then what is the way forward. So Kamala Bhasin does this very lovely book. So this is an English version of it, which one of my teachers gifted to me when Yeshavi was born. And I think it's fascinating. So if you can take 5 seconds to quickly read it. It's talking about how, where does the problem start? The problem starts at the level of socialization between 0 to 5 or 0 to 7 years of age, where you have told kids that this is the narrative and this is the image that's there. Now, if we are in the lockdown situation, can we change this? Yes, we need to. How do we do this? Kamala Bhasin is giving you this. She says very interesting thing that औरतों और मर्दों में भेद हो सकते हैं, लेकिन भेद अब भेदभाव में बदल गए हैं. So the difference has been translated into discrimination, and it has been happening for way too long. So I want to take a moment and definitely make a reference to how the roles of men and women are at home. And I don't, or rather I would say I would want to make this point is that literally my husband taught my daughter how to brush and when to brush, and and I won't call it that's his job. He decided to do this on his own. So when I was in the train and coming to college, he was the one who gave her this set of habits, which I think I kind of really look up to. So one last thing, Shania, very quickly. So I also want to talk about what changed and what was the newer definition of feminism. I thought there was something, and not everything is dark, but I thought this was fascinating because I have female colleagues and friends and male colleagues and male friends, and who brought in a beautiful references, don't worry, I have your back. And I thought that was such a brilliant metaphor, because when you say the back, it's something that you can't see. And it is also ridden with a lot of anxiety and fear. And when you told people that, don't worry, I am there with you and I will never let you fall down, I think it was brilliant, because we don't want to talk about these narratives. And when two women decide to stand for each other, why is it that we don't look at it from the perspective of challenging hierarchies and as a feminist argument? But now we have the unfortunate saying that shayad in dono mein kuch hai. Haan, trust hai, faith hai, bas, and concern hai. Why do we have to instantly, use another narrative for this? Why can't we talk about the feminism that has been passed down over 3 waves to us, and with a lot of effort and with a lot of sacrifice? Which also means that we kind of stand up to other people's chances. One last thing to end is that क्या हमने औरतों के लिए कभी थाली या ताली बजाई? Which, let me also say this, that I am in no way, under no circumstances, demeaning for whom this was done. But I'm also talking about a whole lot of women as domestic help, women as doing work at home, men as doing work at home, men as domestic help, and a lot of others who are helping this society still function, which could be also our migrant workers. We never said a thing for them. And where does the feminism go? That's what it needs to teach us. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll just stop sharing screen.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was indeed really thought-provoking, and there are so many things that we need to unlearn still as a society. And we have these biases in our mind, which is somewhere always there, I feel, and we also don't realize. So what came to my mind was this famous quote by G.D. Anderson. She's an Australian feminist and writer, and she once said that women don't need to be taught how to be, like, feminism isn't about making women stronger, but it's about changing the way the society perceives women to be. So that is what really struck me. When you gave the example of your husband teaching your daughter brushing, so that is the time I felt that as a society, we really need to be okay, that it is okay and normal for men to subjugate their careers in order for women to go ahead, because you always see it the other way around.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just thought that, and this is something that I missed, is that about for half an hour before the session started, I kept thinking about what I should wear, which also is a representation of how women are supposed to be seen. And I think that half an hour was another reflection into what my discussion is supposed to be today. And it also meant that, I think some years back when I was asked to do a TED talk, and this girl told me that you need to dress Western. Now I see the value of it, because that time because the content of what I was talking about was embroidery, so I decided to wear Indian. But now that I see it in retrospect, it just means very different things. And why is it that the whole concept of power dressing came? Power dressing was not only to become like men. Power dressing was to kind of appropriate your own space. And was there a space like that? So I think it's kind of important to think about those things. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Ma'am, there was one more question that came to my mind.
Yeah.
That when we talk about, we've seen countries like Norway, Finland, New Zealand, which have women leaders, and they've dealt with the pandemic in such a different way. The people in the country have more trust towards the government. So according to you, what do you think a feminist approach in response to this pandemic, what would that have brought about? Major change?
So one thing also, and I think, sociological training or the discourse on feminism should teach us one thing, is that if we are challenging power hierarchies, we shouldn't be speaking its language. So that's one. So if you look at something like this, we shouldn't be not mindful of the fact that all the countries that you have mentioned are also geographically very tiny places. Okay, very tiny. To answer your question, one of the things that I definitely want to mention here is that, so I read that, when you have women leading the country, so if you look at Angela Merkel also, she did phenomenal things of how, for instance, and there are beautiful, and when I'm saying beautiful, I'm saying that with utmost care, is that there are beautiful images of how she's the only woman who's standing amongst, the bigwigs across the globe as global leaders. And she stands with that sort of, courage. But if you look at a lot of, if we were supposed to take it from a feminist perspective and address the idea of the lockdown, it was supposed to bring in a lot of access to resources. It was supposed to make the lockdown as a gradual process. It was supposed to, and I'm sorry I'm saying this, but it was supposed to get women familiarized with that, what was the lockdown going to get for them. Whether it was violence, whether it was double the amount of work. And can we then give some leeway to women and men who were doubling up or tripling up the kind of work that they were doing? Because you were making deadlines just like everything else, and you said, "अरे क्या फर्क पड़ता है, तुम तो घर पे ही हो, घर पे ही नहीं है, घर पे भी है, ऑनलाइन भी है, हमारे लिए कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं, सेवा ही कर रहे हैं." And in that particular spot, that from the feminist perspective, that you had to challenge it, but also have solutions for it. Because a lot of times people say feminism is about bashing up men. It is not. It is about first critiquing something, but then also providing solutions for it. And in this particular spot, that there had to be this entire gradual process in which you were supposed to get women familiarized with things, and you were supposed to make things available to them. And it's not about Ration Pani. It's about a lot of things. Whether you talk about deadlines at work, whether you're talking about study that they are supposed to take care of their kids, and the submissions that need to be done even on that front. And I think there has to be some amount of like you pay up for an academic journal to get access to some things. I think there should be a certain, certain stricter ways of how you can make certain means not accessible for people to consume, because they was just so demeaning. So yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, there was also a comment which said that I think feminism is misunderstood for what is advocated as pseudo-feminism and misandry.
So if you look at and that's the whole exercise I think that we are doing over these 2 lectures that happen between today and tomorrow, is precisely to say is that, how often we keep labeling feminism as pseudo. Because there is a discomfort with the feminism or the movement that it is for. And that's the reason why it's very easy. And it's a very, that's why I said that, it's a very reductionist way of saying that, this is all pseudo-feminism. Why is it also called pseudo-feminism is something that we need to talk about, or when we are saying misandry, is because that the change that it is proposing hasn't come yet. So then what you are saying is that it is a failure. and it is fake and it is superficial. But it's not fake and superficial. It means that the hierarchy and the power dynamic is so deep rooted and so problematic that it is going to take us decades or maybe some more years to change the narrative. And that's the reason why I gave the example of Kamla Bhasin, is that she's deciding to do it from her perspective is from nursery rhymes, because actually the idea of male and female and gendered roles is coming from that socialization. So it's very easy to call a movement pseudo or utopian for that matter.
Yes, ma'am, I absolutely agree. Due to lack of time, we'll have to end the questions right now.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Please put on their cameras on so we can get a nice picture.
I think one thing we should say that in the lockdown, we should be okay with the way we look. And that should be one other takeaway from this session. We don't need to dress up for a camera or for a human. Just feel safe in what you do.
Yes, ma'am, just comfortable, yes.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, everybody. I'm just putting the link. Please fill the form.
Also, we would like to thank everybody for being here, and special thanks to you, ma'am, for conducting this session, for
Yes, ma'am.
It's been a pleasure
coming here.
So, thank you so much.
There's a lot to take back, and there's a lot to think upon.
I'm glad.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And we would also like to thank Neha ma'am and Sam sir for always supporting us throughout this. And special thanks to Keshav sir for helping us with the technical things. And also thanks to the audience for joining us, because if you weren't there, then this session wasn't possible.